Found it. Oh, there it is. Hello and welcome. It is a new year. It is a new podcast. What the hell's the name of our podcast? I should probably know that. We're going to start this over because I just blanked on
Supermax.
I blanked on the name of our podcast. Wow.
Leave this in. Leave it in.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Cold open, baby. Let's go.
Keep
the
going.
cold open indeed. Supermax podcast. I am Jared. I am here with Jared.
The other Jared.
The other Jared. There are two of us, and we have a special guest today. Esfandiar. We're gonna call him S because that's what he goes by on his own podcast. I just said it right before, and then Baraheni, the lead NBA reporter, STP Sports. Welcome. Thanks for joining.
Appreciate you having me on. You actually killed the pronunciation pre-recording. It was perfect.
And then I completely fucked it up when I hit record. Like I've done the entire podcast. The first 30 seconds have just been a complete shit show.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Thank you for joining. So this is an annual thing that we do here. We are going to jump into our worst contracts podcast. Now, in the past, what we've done, it's been just me and Jared doing this, and we have counted down our top 10 from 10 to 1. Throw some honorable mentions out there. But having a third person on for this one, we are going to draft. We're going to do 6 rounds. Each person will get 6 players at the end of this. And we'll see how everything lines up and what our thoughts are. We're going to jump right into it. Since you're the guest, we're going to have your first pick.
Let's go. Okay. I will say ahead of time that I suck at this game, so you guys have an edge on me for sure. Honestly, it was difficult because I was looking at the contracts and I'm like, well, there's a way that could end up being a good contract, or hey, they're playing better now, compared to when, this might have been a bad contract. But okay, number 1 on my board, this I feel like might be an undisputed number 1, Bradley Beal.
Yep. Oh, look at this. We all got that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. There we go. We got it. 3 years, $160 million. The final year being a player option of $57 million at 33 years old. Add on the fact that he has the no trade clause still, so he can dictate wherever he ends up going, whatever he ends up doing. So yeah, Bradley Beal, especially with the back problems flaring up, you're like,
yep.
I don't know how that's gonna look in a couple of years. So Brad Beal.
That's number 1 thing for me was like he can't stay healthy. I mean, how many games have he, Durant, and Devin Booker played together? I think 2 maybe this year.
2. Yeah, they played last night for the second time.
Yeah. So we're what, almost 40 games into the season. That's the fact they only played together twice is alarming. Jared, you also agreed with this one, as you should.
If I'm paying somebody $50 million or more, you better have an MVP or a ring. He's got neither.
Yeah.
This thing has legs. This is a long contract. And I cannot fathom a team intentionally taking that on. I can't believe the Wizards got rid of him.
I can't either. It's baffling. But
although
they try,
the Wizards have another, I'm sure we'll get into in a bit of another bad contract.
Not as bad as Bradley Beal, though.
You're right.
Not as bad as Bradley Beal. No, but I think this is something that I've heard Bill Simmons refer to. It's new owner syndrome, where they just want to go out and try to make the biggest, splashiest play, and that's why. Guys, help me out. What's the Suns owner's name? I just blanked on it.
Matt Ishbia.
Matt Ishbia. Thank you. He went out and made the trade for Kevin Durant like literally days after acquiring this team. And then the first offseason goes out, tries to get Bradley Beal to make another splashy play. Yeah. So, I mean, I get it from that mindset, but then you're also locked in for over $200 million when you really look at it, because there's no way he's declining that player option. And if he does, he's an idiot.
It's just funny because if you look at the highest paid player this year, it's Steph Curry, KD, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, LeBron James, and then Bradley Beal, which is just like, what?
It makes perfect sense to me. I don't know why we're even questioning this. This is obvious to me.
Yeah.
All right. So we all agree Bradley Beal's number 1. Jared, I think I know who you're going to go with at number 2, but let's let you take that.
This is going to be Snake, right?
This is a snake, yeah.
Okay. I have to go with this guy because if I wasn't going to take him at 2, you're going to take him at 3. Zion Williamson.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh,
all right. That's not who I was going to... Okay.
Let me just read out some stats. He's making $34 million this year to be a disappointment. He's being paid $36 million next year, 39, 42, 44 in the year 2028. I know there were jokes about him being the next Greg Oden, but this is him being the next Greg Oden for an even sadder reason. Not just because it's like a regular injury, it's like a weird confluence of like injury slash like weight problems slash I don't want to be here, I don't want to play Ben Simmons syndrome. I think the NBA, I've said it before and I'll say it again until the day I die, they should have conspired and rigged the draft and sent him to New York to boost the ratings and get him energized, because sending him to the worst market in the league, to the maybe the most nothing team in the league, is such like a waste. You get him on the Knicks, and then you miss the second chance where you had RJ and Cam Reddish. You could have gotten him. Nah, chip sailed. Chip sailed.
Wait, so as a Knicks fan, you really want Zion Williamson?
For the right price. I don't know. I don't like these numbers, but if like his contract were to somehow be voided because of like overeating, then maybe we can get him on a discount. But I don't want to pay him $45 million in the year 2028.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we don't even know if he's going to be playing in 2028. The trajectory right now, he may be out of the league just because he can't stay healthy. It's definitely not a lack of talent. The talent is absolutely there, but just completes an ability to take care of your own body.
If the Pelicans were to call you tomorrow and say Julius Randle for Zion Williamson swap straight up, even if the money doesn't work, I don't know if it works, but yeah, would you do it?
You know what's funny? I would, if the Pelicans included some draft stuff.
Okay, just to take on the
Because
contract.
I'm willing to get off Julius Randle. Like, that's not a blow to me. Like, I don't care.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, I'm the kind of guy that for all the teams I root for, I'm willing to like give up everything we have to get like someone who will actually lead us to the chip. So you got to be like a top echelon dude, and I'm willing to sacrifice everything for that. So I'm not like precious about like Julius Randle or anything, but
right.
You got to sweeten the deal.
How many pick swaps were you talking about to do you think make it worthwhile?
You got to give me two firsts. Yeah. You got to make it worth my while.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's rough.
I'm willing to roll the dice. I'm willing to gamble, but as it stands currently, one of the worst contracts in the league.
Go back to that draft. Everybody was talking about him as being a generational talent, and now we're like, well, for Julius Randle, you have to throw in a couple of firsts as well as Zion to make this happen.
That's tough.
Yeah, I actually had him number 3 on my board. Because there's one guy who I thought Jared may have number 1, who he hasn't been mentioned yet. He is currently on the trade block. He's very unhappy with the team he's on, and he signed a massive extension recently. Was it last offseason? I believe it was last offseason. Zach LaVine, currently $40 million this year, 43 next year, 45 the year after, and then 26, 27 as a player option for almost $49 million. Now,
nice.
If I have that contract, not nice. If I'm Zach LaVine, very nice. If we're looking at a winning team, right? We're looking at a championship caliber team. I don't see Zach LaVine as being any better than the 3rd best option on a championship team.
At best, honestly.
Yeah,
at best.
That's the best case scenario. Or if complete theoretical here, you have a Steph Curry playing in his prime, you have Nikola Jokic, and then you have Zach LaVine as your 3rd option. Because of the other 2, I think you can win, and he's just helping every now and then. But I can't see Zach LaVine being a key piece on any championship team. I remember when this contract happened, Jared kind of lost his mind. And very fair. One of the worst contracts in the league. I had that number 2 actually behind Bradley Beal.
I think that's fair, to be honest with you. I had it at 3. I have one player ahead of him, but ultimately with LaVine, it's like the knee issues, right? Constant knee issues. Also, he's had 2 surgeries, I believe, on the same knee. You have that massive deal.
Yep.
Plus, there's like a 15% trade bonus if he does get traded. So
I didn't even mention that. So that's you're going to be at $50 million per year if you're taking him on,
which
which
is just
is
nuts. Yeah.
ridiculous. We're talking about Bradley Beal money, and obviously Bradley Beal is, a megastar because he's making, oh wait, no, he's not. So yeah, that's who I have at number 3. At number 4, if we had done this at the beginning of the season, this guy may have been number 1, but he has really started to play pretty well for the number 1. I think they're still number 1 in the West. And that's
right.
Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert, I think our first one, Jared was kind of shocked when I brought him up because I was like, this guy has an awful contract. And to be quite frank, he really does. We're talking about a center who is now 31. He has 41 million this season, 43.8 next season, and a player option for 46.6 million. And there's no track record of seeing somebody at that size age gracefully. If you guys can think of someone that I'm not thinking of, feel free to say them. I like this Timberwolves team right now with what they're doing. I think Anthony Edwards is really taking it to another level. I think they're playing very well. Gobert's playing well. He is playing like a guy who's legitimate, defensive stalwart, but I don't know how long he can do that for, given his age, given his size, all that kind of stuff. So I think you're looking at almost a dead contract in a couple of years with 47 million against somebody's cap.
I have a hot take. I think there are 2 players on the Timberwolves with worse contracts.
There's one who I have right behind him.
There is, I was gonna say there's another one that might be up there for debate.
Might be worse. I think there might be 2 guys.
I have Gobert right ahead of one of the other guys, and I'm wondering who the other one is because I do have someone pretty far down the list, a third Timberwolf, but for right now it's just 2.
It was a recent extension, I'm assuming, Jared, right? Yes.
Possibly. I can't give up the names of my sources because they're on my short list to draft. But
so yeah, I have Zach LaVine, Rudy Gobert 3 and 4.
Okay.
All right. Let me tell you guys about the highest paid player in the league come 2028. And it's a man who is not currently the best player on his own team, maybe not second or third best. He can't dribble. It's Jaylen Brown.
No, that was my pick. Damn it.
Jaylen Brown is estimated to be making mid to high 50s going forward. And then in the year 2028, Earth might be gone. $61 million. Again, I don't want to pay someone that much if you don't have an MVP or a ring. Usually those 2 things are conflated. And they're going to have to give this kind of deal to Tatum, which makes more sense.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that he was maybe the best Celtic on the finals team. They were 2 games away from winning the championship. But the team kind of pivoted in another direction of like, let's get Holiday and White and Porzingis and like, let's, get the most stacked roster. And they're paying him the most money?
It's that price of wanting to keep that young talent, and it's a situation where teams are starting to overpay to give that max contract because other teams will threaten to give him.
I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Celtics, I'm letting him go because I think you can trade him, get some assets, and be able to save that cap space. You can still get Porzingis, you can still get Drew Holiday, you can still do those things. I had Jaylen Brown at number 6 actually, so right around this range.
No, that's a good one. That was the one I was going to take. I have another option here though. Another player who also extended this summer, much to the demise of Damian Lillard, who got traded, months later, but still got his friend his contract. This is Jeremy Grant, 5 years, $160 million till he's 33 years old. He also has a final year as a player option, which is like, are executives just throwing these player options in as a gimme? Because it's incredible to see so many players have late, like mid-30s player options available to them. Player option worth of, what is it, $36 million for Jeremy. So I don't know he's worth that type of player. I mean, he's listed as right now the 49th highest paid player in the league. It's going to rise as that contract rises. So Jeremy Grant, tough.
Yeah, I had him on my list as well. I remember that extension happened. There was some rumors that, hey, maybe they're going to try to run it back with Damian. Maybe they're not going to trade him. But obviously they ended up trading him. And now you could make the argument that Jeremy Grant is potentially the third best big man on that team when everybody's healthy. But he's not the only overpaid guy on that team. We'll get to that later.
Dun dun dun. Yes,
Yeah.
you're correct.
Yeah.
The other guy, I have another player who was traded this summer. I had alluded to him when I mentioned the Bradley Beal swap. This is Jordan Poole, who doesn't even look like a mid-level exception type of player right now, and he's making 3 years, $90 million for the next 3 years, which is just insane money for the type of productivity that he's putting out there. He just sometimes he genuinely just does not look like an NBA player even. So
yeah, it's crazy that drop off he had, because the Warriors championship run, he really looked like kind of that next generation piece for the Warriors, that was going to take over for Steph, that was going to take over for Clay. And now he's just kind of middling his way through life in Washington, D.C.
As one does. Yes.
As one does. Yeah. Yeah. That fall is, conspiracy time. Do you think he lost his talent when he got punched in the face by Draymond Green?
Maybe. Yes. Just like have you watched The Sixth Man, where the ghost, pops up? Have you guys watched that movie? No, the Wayans brothers, one of his brothers dies, and then he takes over his body as a basketball player, and he becomes like an all-star. And so maybe Draymond punched the ghost out of Jordan Poole, whatever ghost was in there. You guys should watch that movie. It's a good movie.
Chris Duhon replaced him now. Chris Duhon's still alive and well, as far as I know. Shout out Chris Duhon. All right, so Jordan Poole. Jared, who you got next?
I think the Karl Anthony Towns contract is way worse than the Rudy Gobert one. Because I'm a defense first kind of guy, and I hate paying players who don't play. I know. I don't like paying players who don't play both ends of the court competently. And I know that his defense has been improved. People on Twitter have been telling me that ever since I was yelling about the Knicks to not trade for him. And they were like, no, his defense is better. And I'm like, I don't care. He's another guy who's going to be making $60 million into the 2028 season, which we all might be dead by then. I just think that it's such an albatross to like make him a part of your team if you're going to trade for him or keep him. Because he's good. He gives you great fantasy stats. There's no track record of winning. And I just don't. It's just like a weird logjam right now. I know they're like really, really good, the Timberwolves, but like I feel like come playoff time, like I don't know, it just seems so awkward to just throw him out there. You want him to be like your sort of stretch five Porzingis guy on like a really good defensive team. And I just don't know where he fits in anywhere. Like you'd have to put him on like a team like the Wizards, where it's like there's like no one, and just like, kind of let him work. And again, it'll be a lot of empty stats. God, these numbers, like paying him $50 million like in the next few years is mind-boggling. So I can't believe he fell this far. So I'm taking Cat.
Yeah, I actually had him right behind Gobert, but I had to take Levine. I had to take Gobert, and no, I get it. Cat. Not that long ago, I feel like he was one of those like focal. It feels like it wasn't that long ago. He was one of those guys we kind of saw as the next guy potentially, and it's just kind of not nearly what Jordan Poole fell off was, but there's definitely been a decline since then. All right, so I've got two here, and one I think is pretty obvious. He would have gone a lot sooner had there not been just 2 years left on his deal. But the fact he doesn't even hardly play
I know
means that Ben Simmons has to be on this list. And he's here at 9. He makes 37.8 this year, and then he will make 40 million in his final year. The Nets probably, in my mind, will try to find a way to trade him with some picks to try to get something next year. I can't imagine them just letting him walk away, because someone out there wants a big expiring contract. Somebody's going to take him on. even if he doesn't, play on the court for them at all.
Yeah, I wonder if that makes it valuable. Like the fact that they have a $40 million expiring next year. Not necessarily valuable, but just like you have a chunk of nothing here that you can send to someone, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, if we're talking about potential trades, and this is a complete, again, I throw a lot of hypotheticals out here, but if the Blazers want to clear some cap space and they say, hey, you know what, we have Jeremy Grant, and if you really want to take this guy on, you think he can help your team, we'll take Ben Simmons, but you have to throw us a first round pick, a pick swap, whatever with it. And then they lose $40 million. They have that space the coming offseason after that. Jared, you're shaking your head.
I was going to take him as soon as he was available, but there really is only so much time left of Ben Simmons being a professional basketball player, which he clearly doesn't want to do. Yeah, he's just like a weird chip. Like, who's the guy we were talking about, JRK, who is like, he had one great season of shooting, Davis Bertans, one great year of shooting, and this weird man from Europe has this large bag of money, and all he's doing is being moved around.
Yeah. Like, can you tell me without Googling it? Can you tell me who Davis Bertans currently plays for?
The Thunder?
Yes.
That's correct. Yeah. No, I looked that up earlier. I was like, I'm not sure where he is right now.
It's just the Freeport thing from Tenet. He's just artwork moving from airport to airport. It's just like he's not even a real person. It's not a real job. It's just so bizarre.
No, that's fair. Davis Bertans is on my list. He's not here though. So I have Ben Simmons, and this next one could be controversial, may not be. I don't know what you guys are going to think. This guy has multiple rings. He's never been an MVP, but he signed a new contract this past offseason and has missed about a month of time because he can't keep his attitude in check.
Gotcha.
So I have Draymond Green here, who this past offseason signed a 4-year, $100 million contract that includes a player option in 26-27 when he'll be 36 years old for $27.6 million. And he has a 15% trade bonus contract note that I see here. Look, they want to keep the core together in Golden State. I get that. Clay's in his final year. We're probably going to see some sort of extension with him, even though he has not been playing well at all. But I just feel like the fact that Draymond, if we go back to a previous player, may have ruined the future and replaced Jordan Poole's ghost with somebody else, maybe Chris Duhon, then you're already ruining one player. You're not able to stay on the court because of these anger issues, because of the attitude. Yes, there is good defensive presence when he's there, but how long will that continue? He's 33 now. He's going to be 36 by the time this contract's over. Maybe controversial, but I have Draymond Green here.
I don't hate it. I think that's a good pick. And somehow I completely forgot about just because he's been all over the place with it. I forgot he even had a contract extension at that point. Yeah, it just makes sense because his defense has fallen off as well. Yeah. And his physicality, he's trying to overcompensate for it clearly with the punches and the arms and limbs falling all over the place. Yeah, makes sense. Terrible contract. It's probably going to age horribly too.
It's going to definitely age horribly. I think next year he might be up further on the list, even with a year less on the contract.
Yeah. He was on my short list, but the way you were pitching him, it was like guy who has multiple rings and no all-star appearances. And I was like, what?
I didn't say no. Did I say no? Did I say no?
No, you said no MVPs.
No MVPs. Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely been in the all-star game.
Yeah. I was like, that like threw me off or whatever. Okay. Let me go out on a limb.
Okay.
And pick a guy who is the NBA's Joker character, not nickname.
Oh, I was like, what?
The team gave him a player option, which seems like the most fiscally irresponsible thing to do. Getting paid 37 this year, 40 next year, and almost $43 million in year 2026. Kyrie Irving, I'm going to take.
Oh, yeah.
Because you cannot trust this man.
Fair.
You cannot trust him. And I'm not quite sure making him the second best player at this point in his career is gonna work if your number one guy isn't like the greatest defender on the planet. I don't see Kyrie Irving's value being that much money. Like, this is not Cleveland Kyrie. something about it just stinks to high heaven. Even though this year he's been relatively quiet, and the Mavericks are not horrible. I think they're pretty good, but like, I just don't know what team need like if they didn't get him before Dallas got him, and then he's stuck on Dallas. If you're stuck on Dallas, then you're not really going anywhere. So it's just this weird like, yeah, it's just icky.
Yeah, no, the point you bring up though about him being the second best player to a guy who doesn't play defense, I think is huge because Dallas is really hurting on the defensive side. And it's because their two best players both suck at defense. You could say they're both like potentially generational offensive players, but defensively, there's not a lot there. So I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. I had it much further down the list, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna go off the board. I have some names here, but one just popped up as I'm looking at the most paid players in the league one, and I think this is pretty good consideration, considering the fact that he is getting paid $70 million in the year 2028. $70 million in the year 2028. Just outrageous levels of money. Like you said, Jared, the Earth may not exist at that point. Anthony Davis is getting paid
Oh wow.
$70 million. And I by the way, I don't mean in the, he's been good this year. Great defensive player, plays well when he's healthy, but the when he's healthy part is a huge discussion.
Yeah.
And given that fact, if you're, kind of predicting towards 2027, 2028, it's tough to see that a guy with that much mileage on his body, that many injuries, can be paid $70 million. So, yes,
which will be
Anthony
more
Davis.
than Giannis in the same season.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely wild. Yeah. So Anthony Davis. Oh, and
Man,
I get another one done. Yeah.
I completely I don't know why I blanked on Anthony Davis as being one of those guys, but now that I'm looking at this contract, it's like, what the shit, man?
It's a lot.
Oh my God. And he's going to be 34 when that player option hits, and he's already got those health issues. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, is it a player option too? Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, he's definitely taking that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of money to not accept.
Yeah.
The other one is kind of a low key kind of deal. It's not a star, but I do think it's a tough contract and one that the Hawks had to pay to give up, and probably the Jazz will have to pay to give up as well. And that is John Collins, who has 3 years left on his contract, $75 million. And once again, for some reason, a player option in his final year worth $27 million. Player options just being thrown out for no reason. That's, tough. But yes, John Collins. That's the choice.
Is that like a thing that's like a requirement now? Is that if you're going to give a player a new contract, there has to be a player options? I feel like every single player who gets an extension. Yeah. I mean, that might be it. Yeah. But I feel like every single player who gets one gets that player option thrown in there.
You want the free agent. You gotta give the people what they want.
You sweeten the pot. You sweeten the pot with the player option to make it. And sometimes you say lesser years for the player option kind of thing. And
what's funny with John Collins is that when Jared and I first started doing this podcast, he was still on his rookie deal. And when you look at from a fantasy salary cap perspective, John Collins was one of the top 5 players in fantasy at the time because you were paying him literally, I think it was like $1 million, maybe. Like he had a very small rookie contract, and it was just such a good deal. And now it's kind of flipped to where he's literally one of the worst when it comes to those contracts in the league.
That's that. I mean, it's tough because he just isn't the same player he was when he was in his rookie year, or even that year with the Hawks. Conference finals run, making threes, running, dunking. It was just hasn't been the same type of player since.
No, not at all.
I've had to scratch off that name from my list, which, by the way, my list still has like 15 guys on it. Like, how many more choices do we have?
You and I both have 2. S has 1 left.
Right. Okay, but it's my turn now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll rip the Band-Aid off and I'll talk about the elephant in the room. I typically rank these bad contracts in terms of being stuck with an old person years down the line, making an egregious amount of money. And the sort of like worse all of those things are, the worse the contract to me is. Damian Lillard has a player option in 26-27 for $63 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not quite sure that's going to be worth it. It just doesn't seem like
Well, he's going to be like 38 or something, 37, 38, something along those lines, I think.
Yeah, it's a bad combination of too much money, too old. You're gonna get picked on defense uh
Yeah.
in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him win a ring. That deal's just real bad because the player option at the end. It's just real. That's a tough one to swallow.
I mean, I had him on my list, but you took him, so thanks a lot for that. Yeah, that's a tough one because I think a lot of us kind of figured that a Dame Lillard, Giannis 1-2 punch, where you throw in guys like Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez, would really kind of take the league by storm this year. At least I did. And it's been anything but that. Like they looked rough. They looked rough last night. I don't think Dame played last night, but the Bucks got their asses handed to them by Utah. I believe that was a home game too. Um, they've just looked really rough all year.
And a lot of that is Dame, the defense, like
Yeah.
just pylon levels of defense.
Yeah, I mean, you go from Drew Holiday, who's obviously not the same level of offensive player, but he plays pretty good defense, to a guy who doesn't really play. I mean, he's Kyrie level of defense, which is not great. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. So I get 2 picks here. These are my last 2 picks. I do want to make a couple of honorable mentions, guys who, they've been on these lists before, but because they're expiring deals, we kind of weren't able to include them this year. So honorable mentions to Tobias Harris, to Kyle Lowry, and to Gordon Hayward. Those 3. Thank you for all you've done for us. We wish you nothing but the best of luck in your future endeavors. No, they were legends indeed.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to I almost said the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's not where I'm going. The Portland Trailblazers. Because they were involved in a trade this offseason that ended up a 4-teamer. I believe, if I'm correct, Yusuf Nurkic took this guy's role in Phoenix as a result of this trade.
You took my next pick.
Well, too bad. It's DeAndre Ayton, who it's a situation where you had a guy who was the first overall pick, kind of had to pay him to keep him in Phoenix. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, the Pacers gave him this contract, but the Suns matched it. And that's why they ended up keeping him around. He's got $32 million this year, $34 million next year, $35 million the year after. He's averaging 13 and 10. And he's been dealing with knee injuries all year long. It's a sad story we've seen already in the past where a Portland center with very high hopes deals with knee issues, and we'll see how long he's able to stick around. Hopefully longer than, at this point, I think it's longer than Greg Oden. But it's been tough. It's been rough, and I think he would have actually been better off having stayed in Phoenix, personally. Jared, you're shaking your head.
He was the next pick. He's the most obvious. I don't even think there's really that many worse off contracts after you took him. Like, I'm sort of like figuring out like what the hell am I going to do, because like that was another really obvious one.
Yeah,
he looks bad.
Yeah, he looks rough. And again, I think Jeremy Grant, you have Robert Williams there, who I think when he's healthy is the best of the 3, the most consistent. I don't know. It's not great in my opinion. The second one, and S, you may completely fight me on this one and be like, no, this guy's been awesome. But he is a guy.
He has been. I know who it is.
Oh, do you know who it is?
I know for. Okay, anyways, go ahead.
But anyway, it's Jared's team that gave him this contract, and he recently joined yours. Yes. Are we sure that like the top 3 in that draft, Zion, John Morant, RJ Barrett, are those 3 like just 3 of the highest potential, lowest payout guys that we've had in quite a while, because John Morant can't stay out of trouble, and now he torn labrum, I believe. RJ Barrett has been nothing close to what I and a lot of people expected, and Zion we've already covered. So I have RJ Barrett as the next guy. His contract, $23 million this year, 25 next year, 27 and 29. So definitely not the worst contract, but definitely like Is he worth that? I don't think so.
Right. You know what? I didn't want to end this podcast on Canadian slander terms because I have my final pick is another Canadian. So that's the final hint I'll give you on that. But yeah, RJ has been better. If we're basing it on 4 games, he is living up to his contract. But as Jared probably knows, 4 games is not a sample size enough to determine if RJ Barrett is good. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
No, if you took a 4-game sample size, you would assume Jonathan Isaac is never hurt. But as a Magic fan, I can attest to the fact he is constantly hurt. And
there
also,
was a 4-game sample size. Jeremy Lin was the greatest player of all time.
That's true. That's true. Right. One more honorable mention, Jonathan Isaac. We salute you for never playing.
He was on my short list of like, let's just throw him in for fun.
Yeah, I know he was.
Yeah. So I have this list of like 10 dudes who are my honorable mention, so I'm gonna rattle through.
Okay.
A lot of money for Michael Porter Jr., a lot of years. Just wanted to just test the audience and see if like 30 million.
He was a consideration for me, but he also, he wasn't a non-factor in winning a title for Denver. I think he's still overpaid, but I don't think he quite makes my top 20 list.
That's what I figured. Jimmy Butler has always been a perennial dude on this list, but it feels like after bringing his team to the finals.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, last year, this time he was number 1. He was like up there top 3 or so, maybe number 1 because just that extension. And if you remember this time last year too, the Heat were just kind of existing. And then they took off in the playoffs.
There was a guy who I had mentioned about being on the Timberwolves with the worst contract, Jaden McDaniels. Does he deserve all that money? Because he kind of plays the same role as Anthony Edwards, and you have Anthony Edwards. So why did he get an extension into the 20 millions? That confused me. Put your eggs in the Jaden McDaniels basket. Right. Other players who have a lot of money or a lot of years that confuse me. Rui Hachimura, Lou Dort, Anthony Simons, Colin Sexton.
Right.
But the guy who I sort of landed on being the one as my final pick is going to be Devin Vassell or Devin Vassell.
Ooh,
next year, 29 million, 27 million, 27 million, and then it goes down to 24 million in 2027, 28. Right. God, numbers are hard on podcasts. Is he that good? Is he any good?
Can I pause this real quick here? Is anybody outside of Victor Wembanyama on the Spurs worth being paid right now? Because that team is one of the he is fun to watch. He is such an anomaly. 7'4", moves like a guard. It's awesome to watch. Outside of him, if he's not on the court, what is the point of watching the Spurs? To see
terrible.
Greg Popovich stand there?
Yeah, they're terrible. I will say Vassell's contract can either end up becoming an RJ Barrett, which is about the same in terms of distance and time and whatever, or it ends up being a really good contract and he pans out. I don't know. I'm kind of a Vassell believer. I'm not gonna lie.
Shouldn't we know by now whether he's good or not?
He's been hurt a lot. Is my thing that I throw out to give excuse to him, but we'll see. We'll see.
Keldon Johnson's getting paid way less.
Yeah, I think
they have Keldon Johnson.
Yeah.
And apparently they're trying to move him. So I don't know.
Who knows what the Spurs are doing? They have good first overall pick, and that's about it.
They're not playing a point guard. It makes no sense.
Yeah, please get Wemby a point guard. Anybody.
We have Jeremy Sochan. Isn't he playing point guard right now?
You have Trey Jones.
I know, but they're not playing him at point guard.
You have Devontae Graham.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay. I have some honorable mentions to kind of list as well. DeAndre Hunter, 3 years, 75 million. Just not a good player, sadly. Probably not, maybe a rotation player, but not a starter level player. Terry Rozier, 2 years, $50 million. He's been pretty good. Not gonna lie. Been pretty good. So I didn't want to include him in this list, especially because it's a shorter term contract. Harrison Barnes, also not a good basketball player anymore, but 3 years, $54 million. Got the extension this summer, which was really...
Speaking of him confusing. Real quick, have you heard the rumors him for Pascal that have been floating around?
Yes. Yeah, I don't have... There's just no way the Raptors would even consider... I mean, maybe if there was other stuff attached to Harrison Barnes,
Right.
picks, something
Right.
else along the lines, sure, maybe. But I mean, a swap, I just wouldn't understand that by any means,
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
Oh, so okay, my final pick, and this is sadly, like I said, a Canadian. And it has to go to Andrew Wiggins, who also signed a contract
Oh
extension
yeah.
for 4 years, $100 million. Final year is a player option worth $30 million. He just hasn't looked the same this year. If he ends up getting back to the point he was, where it was like, he ended up making an all-star team, whether deserved or not, but was a huge part of their championship and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
If he gets to that point, okay, sounds good. I don't know if he will, is the question I have, and so that's why he makes it on this list.
I mean, let's be honest. On the Warriors, outside of Steph, right now, everybody looks pretty rough.
Yeah.
And was it last year he took like 2 months off, and we're still not quite sure what happened with that. Yeah, but back when they were winning a title just a couple of years ago, he was all defense, just like as good as Draymond at his peak and playing defense and could put points in. It's been a quick little slide for him as well. Couple of guys that I do have on my list that were not mentioned. I get that you brought him in to Houston to be a big time kind of star there with a lot of younger guys. I think Fred VanVleet is massively overpaid there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sure.
Dylan Brooks, anywhere he goes, is overpaid. I also included him. And then my last two that I have on my list were Davis Bertans, because we didn't even know where he was playing. And the one that I kind of went back and forth on my list he's on the list, he's off the list, he's on the list. Duncan Robinson. There's been stretches where we forget that he exists, and then all of a sudden he'll have like one great game. It's like, oh, Duncan Robinson's making 17 million a year or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have just a few more, including a spicy one. I found out the Rockets are paying Jock Landale like $8 million for several more seasons, and I was like, "Who is Jock Landale? Is that a made up name? Is that an AI made up?" Kevin Herter got benched recently. He's getting paid quite a bit of money. Denny Abdia got an extension, and I'm not quite sure if he's like good. And finally, I'm going to name a Raptor. A Raptor who's making the same amount of money every year in and year out, until 2027. And he's got another player option, and I'm not quite sure you need him. Jakob Pertl.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
Do you want to be paying him $20 million from now until 2027? Just like
ideally they didn't even trade for him is my thing. I mean, when you consider that they gave up a top 6 protected first round pick for Jakob Pertl, that contract becomes even harder to deal with, because the opportunity cost of adding a younger player and all that depression sets in. Yes, you're right.
if it makes you guys feel any better, there was a point when my favorite team paid Bismack Biyombo 3 years and $72 million. And I'm still reeling from that. No, that stupid little 5-game stretch with the Raptors and then him 72 million.
Kyle Lowry got him paid.
Still mad about that. Still mad about that.
Hey, don't worry. You'll get through it like I got through Evan Fournier, okay? We'll get through this thing.
See, and now Evan Fournier is a nice little, you get to trade him for a backup point guard with the first round pick. There you go. Yeah.
You can trade him for Devin Vassell. Does that math work?
I don't know.
No,
not at all.
Vassell's going to be paid more. No.
Yeah.
Fair. All right. So I think we went through some really shitty contracts. Damn. Some guys I kind of even forgot about. S, thank you for coming on. Where can we find you on Twitter, podcasts, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. On Twitter at just S Baraheni. All that stuff will be on there as well. Appreciate you guys having me on. Check out SDPN's YouTube channel. Do a lot of Raptors stuff on there, but NBA stuff as well. Thank you guys for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Jared, quick congratulations. Michigan won last night. Yay.
Go blue.
Show the shirt. Hell
Bust the nut. And then beat Ohio State. You can follow me on Twitter at Jared Russo. I'm on Blue Sky as well. And go to Sports Ethos for all of your fantasy needs.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Jared Ross King. And one day I'll update my Blue Sky because I have an account, but haven't done a damn thing with it. Thank you everyone for listening.
Wait, can I ask a fantasy question? Can I ask for some fantasy advice right now?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
So I just traded. I have a keeper league, okay, and we can only keep 3 players. One of them has to be a young guy within 3 years of their career. I just traded Lauri Markkanen and Franz Wagner. I couldn't keep those guys. It wasn't possible to keep those guys. I took in Alperen Şengün and Austin Reeves. Alperen Şengün, obviously, more. Don't worry about Austin Reeves. Just like, I'm not a good team this year. I'm just worrying about next year. Get Şengün as a keeper. I have Jason Tatum, so it'd be Tatum, Şengün, J-Dub. What else should I do? Do you guys think I should trade Tatum, try to explore getting a better player? Let me know, please. It is stressing me every day.
I would consider, if you know you're out of it and you're not going to compete, I would consider trading Tatum. But here's the one thing. And this is something that I realized the other day while I was looking up some stuff for these contracts. How old do you think Jason Tatum is?
25, I think. 26?
25. I feel like he's been around much longer than that. I feel like he should be closing in on 30 with how long he's been around. Yeah. So that's tough. It depends on if you think you can compete next year or if you think you're kind of out for a couple of years. If you're like the Tennessee Titans, just letting everything go.
Right.
Is this a points or categories league?
9-cat.
Okay. I think he's more or less valuable depending on points versus 9-cat.
Right.
It just seems like there's like a weird ceiling where like everyone's expecting him to break through.
And he's just what he is.
And he's never gonna break through. So if you can get something decent for him, like go for it. I also don't know how like position wise, like it seems like having a small forward is very valuable if like you're in a league that has weird constraints around like positions.
Right.
Because like it seems like guards and centers, there's like too many of them, but like that like small forward slot, you're just like, oh, I just want a good one just to shove in there. And Tatum is like the first one off the board for small forward. So I guess it just depends on the return. I'm okay getting rid of him if the price is right.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind because I'm trying to go for higher if I'm trading Tatum, right? Package him with some other stuff, go get another player that might be able to break through that ceiling. Sorry, I just needed to ask since you guys.
No, you're good. You're good. And now I'm thinking about everything I do with Jason Tatum in fantasy. All right, I'll deal with that in my own time. Thank you, S, for coming on. Thank you, Jared, for following your obligation to be here. And till next time, we're out. How do I stop this? There it is.